Hi guys. All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to Kentucky Go Digital. Oh my gosh, it's been like 3 months, I feel like, since we've seen each other. I'm sure everyone on the panel here is so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here. I think the great Marshall Mathers said it best when he said, "It feels so empty without KGD." So we really appreciate him for that reference back in 2003 and that shout out. So super happy to be here. My name is DJ Matty B with JCPS. I'm a digital innovation leader there. Thank you for joining us. We have the sun shining outside. We have vaccine coursing through our veins, but our learning is contagious. It's so awesome. We have an amazing show for you to kick off our spring schedule today. I am super excited to be joined by the awesome Kentucky Go Digital Live team. We have Elaine Abenatha, who's a digital innovation leader for JCPS and is running OBS behind the scenes for us today. We have, I don't see her on the panel here, Heather Worrell. She's chat side. She's the EA of Digital Innovation for JCPS. We have Courtney DeRosset, who is field staff for KDE. We have Heidi Neltner, who's a digital learning coach in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. We have Dana Dowdy, who's a digital learning coach in Graves County Schools. We also have Aaron Davis, who's an innovation specialist for Williamstown Independent Schools. We have Stella Pollard, who's an instructional technology coordinator in Franklin County Schools as well. So chat side, we have Danielle Washburn and Kathleen Receiver, who also work with me in JCPS. They will be taking any questions in the YouTube live chat. So please make sure you drop in there, introduce yourself, let us know what county, what state you're from, what you teach, and please let us know if you have any questions, comments, anything to add to our amazing discussion that we're going to have for the next hour. If you don't have the chat capability yet, make sure that you log in to YouTube, and while you're there, click that subscribe button as well so you can be notified every time that we go live and when we post these awesome videos for you to go back and watch with the power of pause. So hello to everyone joining us on chat side. It is time to hear from an amazing leader from Bellevue Independent Schools. We have with us today Tiffany McGuire. Tiffany taught middle school math and science for 8 years, and now she's in her current position as an instructional coach for 2 years, and she is the coaching lead for NKCES, where she helps to facilitate amazing conversations with regional coaches. Tiffany is starting to dive into the world of gifted and talented as well. In her spare time, which how does she have any, she enjoys running with her fur child Ellie and drinking as much coffee as possible. I'm sure we can all relate there as well. And Tiffany today is going to be sharing about teacher resilience and what teacher isn't resilient at this point, right? But this is a much needed discussion for all of us to have, and it's so great to have you on the show today, Tiffany.
Hi, thank you. What an introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I'm looking at these faces of these amazing educators, and I'm super pumped that they're all here. I am ready for this party. I think now more than ever, this is a conversation that's relevant, right? So this is something that I think we've always kind of had in the back of our minds. It's hey, we do self-care Sunday, right? Like I'm gonna put a fun mask on my face and drink my favorite hot beverage while reading a book, but taking care of ourselves and really cultivating resilience are two totally different things. So I don't need to introduce myself much more than that, because Maddie B gave me the best introduction ever, so I'm glad that lives on YouTube now. So we are gonna kick off. Those of you that are on YouTube, please feel free to chime in on the comments. Those of you that are joining me here in our meet, please feel free to unmute your mic and tell me, or put in the chat, on a scale of 1 to dog, speaking of my fur kid Ellie, who on a daily basis could probably be any of these, because she's kind of crazy, but on a scale of 1 to dog, how are you today? How are we feeling?
I love that question. That's awesome, Tiffany. Can we say all?
Well, I think depending on the hour, right? I think Heidi, we had said, or Elaine, we had said earlier, like between the hour of 7 and 8, maybe 3 of these, we went through all those different phases. Yeah. How's everybody feeling? Does anybody want to unmute their mic and tell us?
I am. Oh, sorry. I'm number 2. I'm 2. Just running along. So happy to be here. I'm glad we're all back together.
I stay at a 4. I don't think I ever leave that zone.
I think
90 miles an hour. Yeah.
I think number 3, because I'm always hungry. I always love food.
Well, I would have to agree with Matt. I'm definitely a 4 because it seems like things go fast, and I'm right behind you in that bed of the truck, Matt.
I'm a 2. I'm like Heidi. I'm just so excited to be here, and it's in the middle of a pandemic to embrace the good things and the good work that the people on this panel have been doing, along with everyone that's watching, that have been in the trenches for a long time before the pandemic. It's really, it's neat to see.
I'm kind of all over the place myself. ACT is next week, so I wear many, many hats in my tiny, tiny district, and back is one of them. So I have experienced every single dog in the past 6 hours. So yeah.
And I have to agree with Courtney and Heidi. I'm a number 2. I'm always happy and hyper, and I'm running from one thing to the next. And Erin, I worked in that district, so I know how many hats you have to wear.
Thank you all for sharing. I can relate to each and every one of those. I am going to jump right into our goals for today. So when we think of resilience, I think there's so many different lenses that we can approach that word from. But really for today, I want us to think about these 3 things and how they pertain to us as educators. And I really think our work together today, even though we have very limited time, I think that these are practices, exercises, and tools that can be used not just with adults, but also with students. And really one thing to add on to that is we have to model how to respond to trauma for our students. They are seeing us in real time. They're seeing how we respond to what's happening in the world right now, and we've got to be the models for them.
I love that last one about becoming stronger, so others can become stronger, and cultivating that energy so we can transform the world. Like that's really important.
I think if we asked everybody, why did you become an educator? That's going to be at the core of almost all of our responses. So what is resilience? Resilience is, like I said, far more than just self-care. It's far more than doing a couple breathing exercises, which we're actually going to do here in a couple minutes. But it's so that when we are faced with life's adversities, we're not just simply surviving them, we're thriving through them. So when I give you this definition according to Psychology Today, I'm not saying that it's not an invitation to ignore our real emotions. We're allowed to be angry, we're allowed to be sad, but we can't remain in that state forever. And we also can't wait until we're in the middle of difficult situations to begin the conversation on resilience. We have to begin the process before. So really my goal today is to help you build your toolbox to begin cultivating that resilience that is within all of us, within all the educators, within all of our students, and anybody else that may work in our schools. And this will help carry us through and help us to do the same for others.
I loved what you said, Tiffany, about the resiliency and modeling that for our students and letting them see the real time. That even our kids at home definitely have to see that, and they're always watching, for sure.
And I think it's really easy to get caught up in our emotions. And if we don't have some of the strategies, well, I will say, I haven't created any of these strategies. These have just been what's been working for me. But I have a couple in my back pocket that I can pull out. So when I need them, I'm like, okay, this is my go-to. So how do we cultivate resilience? Well, it is a process. And as we all know, usually anything that is worthwhile is a slow process. But according to Elena Aguilar, who is one of my just coaching gurus, I I love everything she writes and publishes and shares on her podcast. Heidi and Erin know that. I'm like, yep, there it is. Yep. So Erin has the book that a lot of these strategies have been adapted from. And as we go through each strategy, we will be able to fall each of them into one of these categories. So this helps us to change our brain, to increase our capacity to hold complex, well, really just any complexity, and meet situations as they arrive, so that we're not having to make all the decisions in the moment. Thank you, Erin, for modeling that book. All right, so here is our first strategy. I'm going to share a total of 6 with you today. Those of you that are watching on YouTube, if you want to join in, please feel free to get out your device and hold your camera up to the QR code. It should open you up to a Jamboard, and we're going to do just a little self-assessment with 4 different prompts. And I'm going to need a verbal confirmation that the Jamboard is coming up.
I am on it.
Yep. Woohoo! Okay. So when you get into that Jamboard, it's going to be 4 slides. You have the option here to interact with that whichever way you would like. So if you would like to put a Post-it indicating where you fall on that spectrum, if you would like to put a mark, I think there's an annotation tool that you can use on there. I'll give everybody just a minute to get on there. So there's 4 questions. The first question is, I understand why sometimes it feels hard to see the positive, but I aim to do so anyway. The second question is, I have effective strategies to deal with strong emotions when they come up. The third is, I make choices every day that foster my physical well-being. And the fourth is, I understand how my ability to understand and work with people of different backgrounds influences the strength of the communities I'm in. If you all will just take a few moments and mark where you are on those spectrums. I see some people coming in. I'm gonna go ahead and, do you have the Jamboard up there, Elaine?
I do, I sure do, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Looks like we're all kind of falling somewhere in the middle, depending on the minute of the hour of the day, possibly.
I will say,
go ahead.
sorry. I love the use of the Jamboard in this situation. Like, Jamboard is such a great tool that can be used in many different ways. So even, us on here doing this is a great way to gauge people's feelings and emotions, and it's just really quick too. So it's a great tool.
And it's free. It's our favorite word, free.
And I think for district, if you're out there and you're at the district level, I know a lot of times we talk about our teachers, of course, checking on them, but check on your principals. I mean, I know in principals meetings, this would be a great, just maybe opener, just to let them know, we're all stressed out and we're all in it together, not just the teachers, but the principals need some self-care too and some love.
And just that practice of stopping and thinking of it yourself, not even necessarily for everyone else, just to stop and go, wait, I haven't even thought about that today. It's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, what a great conversation you could have around something like this with your class, with your leadership team, with your colleagues. Like, I love these questions and how they're making me stop to think, hey, how am I doing? What am I going to improve on? That's really good.
Just a shameless plug for the book. So the book that Erin held up, it also has a companion workbook that is, if Elena, if you're watching, I'm your biggest fan. But this is, for each chapter, there's a self-assessment. So what I did for these questions was I just took just like a sampling from different chapters to kind of give us a broad view. But it's amazing because it also has you check back in. So how are you feeling with these particular questions in maybe September versus how you feel in December? And so we've all seen that image of, I think it's the first year teacher and it goes like through disillusionment and then it comes back up. But I feel like that's every teacher every year. So it's not just the first year teacher, so you can kind of see where you're falling on that scale as well.
And I will say, like, after Tiffany showed that book to us a couple months ago, I bought it, and then I'm afraid to write in it. Does anybody else do that, where they're, like, afraid to ruin the book?
It is so new and pretty. So I asked my supervisor, because she was like, is there any resources you want, or are there any resources? I said, yes, this and another book that we talked about in the coach cohort or whatever. And it's the same thing, Heidi. Like I have sticky noted it. I have shared things in PLCs and in our academy with first year teachers, talking a lot about prioritization and self-care. And it's just so good, really good.
Go ahead and take a screenshot of it and then annotate it right there on that. You don't have to worry about it.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Definitely. Onward, though. It's a great book. Cultivating Emotional Resilience in Educators.
I have, at the very end, I knew Heidi and I were like this too. I have a screenshot of just some more further reading. So you'll be excited at the very end for some more book suggestions. I think Amazon, like, he just knows where I live at this point. He's like, yep, she's on the 3rd floor. Like, take her stuff up there. So Heidi, do you care to flip through? Are we flipping through the different questions just to kind of see where everybody's falling? Okay, looks like we have some people participating from YouTube also. So thank you, YouTube folks. All right. I think I was going to ask you all really what were the different emotions that provoked in you as you were doing that, but I think we kind of already touched base on that. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to strategy 2, which is called the quick calm. And I'm going to ask everybody at home to do this as well. So this is an exercise that you can use. This is for if there's students watching, which, by the way, special shout out to Miss Wheatley's 3rd bell. I believe that just across the hall, they're watching me right now for their verbal communications class, and they're also filling out a feedback form. So, woo-woo, I know, how cool is that? So be nice. But anyway, this is an exercise that any of you all can do to quickly calm yourself and relax. So anytime you have a surge of uncomfortable feelings, it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be something else. We're going to engage our 5 senses. Okay, so I am going to walk you through this. And I've been working on my yogi voice and my Zen voice. So I'm going to try to get that. Okay, so everybody that's participating, I want you to, number 1, close your eyes or find a place to gaze where you can draw your attention inward. If I had talked to Matt before, I should have had him get like some waterfall music or something in the background. I feel like he's on it. Like, I feel like he's like, I got this. Number 2, we're all going to take 5 slow, deep breaths, and I want you to count them on your hand. You don't have to show me your hand, but as you take your breaths, I just want you to keep track of them. If you struggle with deep breaths, try to inhale for 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 6. You have your breaths. I want you to open your eyes. Now I want you to name in your head 5 things that you can see around you. Things, name 4 things that you can touch or feel. Now, identify 3 things you can hear. two things you can smell. Last one is to name the place right now. Okay, so that was a quick exercise. I think it took us about maybe 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. So let's just have a quick conversation comparing and contrasting how we felt before, during, and now after this exercise.
Much calmer
Much calmer.
and a little bit humored reaction. You said two things you can smell.
I think it's
I was just trying to feel like one of the dogs again. So
I really think that like has the amount of time that took, like how much better it makes you feel. Like I don't know why we don't do this all the time. Like that's what I was thinking to myself.
Yeah, I feel much more present. Like, yeah, it really made me focus. And I also was thinking that it would be a good strategy to use either if you're teaching digital or hybrid, or you're teaching, or you're in a meeting that's like a Zoom meeting, and playing the music with like Matt just threw in there, it was great because it gave you a point of reference for everyone, but then it would allow you to compare and contrast what's happening in other people's spaces and give you a point of connection too.
Do you wonder? I wonder about how music ties into it. It interacts with certain people's brains. Their synapses fire more on music, and I wonder if that even just puts more into it as value and gives them another tool to know that music can just calm them as well.
I think that music really made a difference for me because I almost felt like that's what I'm a rule follower, pretty type A. So for me to have music, it made me think mentally I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, which made me even more calm, that it was normal does that make sense? You can tell I need this session today, right?
I had a little bit of anxiety myself this morning, like even just with the hustle and bustle of coming into work, and just from the moment I took those deep breaths and those being very conscientious of those deep breaths, I could just feel weight leave my like arms and shoulders, and I could just feel it.
Well, Erin, it's funny you say that because a little bit later we're going to talk about completing the stress cycle. And when we complete the stress cycle, we have to tell our bodies that we're safe. So even though and I'm going to say this a little bit later, but it doesn't hurt to hear it more than once. Even though we've dealt with the stressor, that doesn't mean that we've dealt with the stress. So that was your way of telling your body, speaking its language, like you're okay. Yeah.
I think that would be the quote, one of the quotes right now. Even though, I make sure I say it right, even though you've dealt with the stressor, doesn't mean you've dealt with the stress. That's big to me.
And that is not my quote. I will give credit to that here in just a little bit. So it's in a book called Burnout. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later too. Another tool, so we could use that with students, as you said, Heidi. Another tool that I learned from one of my colleagues several years ago to just tap into the 5 senses is to take your fingers. And this is a shout out to Bruce Tosalt or Laura Rittinger if they're out there, because they taught me this. So, and you can go quicker if you need to kind of energize yourself. So you just tap through your fingers and then you tap your thumb twice and go back through, or you can go slower and that helps to calm you down too. Great tool for students too when they're fidgety.
Mm-hmm. My daughter, she used fingers to help herself down, but all students all.
Sharing that. Okay. So there's 2 strategies we've done. We've done our self-assessment to kind of see where we were. We have calmed ourselves. Oh, and speaking of the music, I was reading something interesting not too long ago about how music can have the adverse effects So it can energize us, and it can also, because some people think that silence is like deafening, right? And silence is annoying, so we need music. But I read this research about, I always listen to Vitamin String Quartet. But the problem with that is that they do popular songs, and then I know all the words. So in my head, I'm still just singing the words. So it was about multitasking. Like, if you are going to listen to instrumental music, it shouldn't be something that you know the words to. So side note on that.
Tiffany, I found that it took me a really long time in college to figure out what music was best for me. And it turns out the Lord of the Rings soundtrack is like #1 most productive music I have. Like, you give me some Riders of Rohan and Lighting of the Beacons, and I will knock stuff out.
Mm-hmm. I like, everybody like runs to really fast music, and I'm like, give me some Canon in D. Like, that's what I'm gonna run to, because I get all in my head and I'm like, you can't do this any longer. Like, you need to stop. So I always have to calm myself. Yeah, I love that, Matt. All right, let's go on to one of my favorite strategies. This is strategy number 3, and this is the listing strategy. So the 4 lists that I have up here for you are the right now list, which I think is kind of self-explanatory, right? It's the things I have to get done right now today. My could-do list, and I think that those 2 lists, really, all of these lists can be used with students as well. So what assignments do you have to do right now? What tasks do we have to get done right now? The could-do list, which is, if I have some time, I could squeeze this in, right? Like, I know that it's a long-term goal, but I might not get to it today. The later list, so that's your list several weeks from now. So when Heidi emailed me in January and we were talking about planning this moved to my later list, and then all of a sudden it was on my right now list. Right? Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's March. Like, it is go time. And then the brain dump list, my absolute favorite, and I want to hear your all's perspective on this. This actually is my notebook right here. So this is my brain dump list for this session right now. So I thought about it, and it was, I thought about it for weeks, and it's just taking up so much brain power that all of a sudden I had to say, I'm not ready to actually put anything in Google Slides. I'm not ready to create Jamboard or anything, but I've got to get this out of my brain. Because when we get it out of our brain, I'm able to focus on other things, especially the bright spots, or just being more self-aware. So like the decluttering of the brain. So I want to hear how you all make lists, because I know that those aren't the only ways to make lists, and maybe you don't make lists and you're like, I really need to try some of these ideas.
I am 100% a brain dumper. Like, it eases my anxiety. I get all this stuff in my head and like body, and it needs to go somewhere. And I just like open up Google Slides and brain dump images and like video and pictures and words, like all of it. It just goes in a slide deck. Yeah.
I'm the queen of lists as far as in my household, but I also struggle with where to keep them all in one spot, because I can't keep up with a notebook. That's just another thing. So I use my phone, but then I'll jump from Google Keep to Jamboard to the reminders, and the Apple Cloud stuff. It's just, I struggle with keeping it all in one spot, for sure.
And I struggled with that for years too, Elaine. I'll share that. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say I recently got a Rocket book, and I love that I can use the hands-on part of that notebook, but also have it digitally, because I can scan all of my stuff and it goes automatically to my Google Drive. So I have it on my phone, in the Rocket book app, in my Google Drive on my computer, and in the physical notebook as well. And then I can erase it. Sorry.
It's one of the things that I have been talking with our first year Williamstown teachers. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, but that resilience piece and that prioritization piece, and making lists however it works for you, but kind of thinking, what would happen if I didn't do task X right now? And that was something I always posed to them, because they feel like in COVID teaching world, everything is coming onto them and coming onto them every time an administrator comes into their room, every time a teammate comes into their room, every time a parent comes into their room. And I say, what would happen if you didn't take care of this email or didn't respond to this phone call? Like, what would happen if you didn't do it this second? And a lot of light bulbs go off, and maybe the world won't crash down on me if somebody has to wait 45 minutes or something.
I am writing that down and stealing it right now. That's so good.
Take it, own it.
Erin, I really wish you were at Williamstown my first year of teaching, because I could have used that advice.
I was looking at some of the chat on YouTube, and I saw where Heather Worrell, she's in the chat, and everything we're talking about, like, we are adults and we're like, we need this, we're writing it down, great idea. What about the students? You know, we need to teach these strategies, especially now virtually. And she was talking about students need these strategies too. You know, we're talking about the adults, but the reason we're in this position is no one took us aside and taught us to do this, you know, before now, some of us.
Well, we think being busy is normal. That's always been, I mean, even before COVID. And so it's and we're educators, we're people pleasers. So it's so easy. You don't want to let anybody down. You always put somebody else before yourself. And it's so easy to like forget like your self-care is a priority. Because if you're not 100%, what good are you to anybody else in your circle?
Erin, what you said reminds me of that article we read, I think, in our instructional coach PLN about the glass balls or the rubber balls or the imaginary balls. Like, what are the things, and it reminds me of like our spheres of control, right? Like, if I drop this, will it break? If I drop it, will it bounce back up? Or am I actually imagining this? Like, is this actually not an issue that I'm just making up in my head?
There was one instance I had a teacher say, in describing her stress, she goes like, just now I got an email from my principal and I need to finish this survey about how I would like to be recognized for my work. And I said, what would happen if you didn't answer it this second? Is she going to like not renew your contract next year? No. 20 other people are not going to do this survey. She's going to send a remind email next week like, hey, I would really like feedback from this. It's going to be a bulk email. And you move on. I mean, like we worst case scenario a lot of times in our heads. It's like those imaginary balls.
Well, and all of that is part of that package of resilience, right? Like if we don't know what it feels like to be resilient and to have those tools in our toolbox, we don't even know that that's an option. Like we don't know it's an option to not get back to them within 5 seconds. Yeah. Thank you all for sharing. My brain dump list, by the way, Heidi, you said you're a brain dumper. Like I still have mine right here. And I am a notebook person, Elaine. Like I take this thing everywhere. Like I could just be going to a basketball game. And I'm like, oh, where's my notebook? I need it for no reason at all.
I'm just afraid I'm going to lose it. And then I'm going to be really up a creek. But if it's digital, I can get onto it in a different with a different device. Yeah. That's the problem for me.
I totally see that. I think I just spend so much on digital that to pick up an old school pencil every once in a while just feels good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's go on to strategy number 4. We are cruising right along. So strategy number 4 is knowing yourself and allowing you to be more self-aware so that when you are knowing when you're working with others and you're working with your students, and the students need to know themselves as well, this allows us to kind of tap into our human psyche. And this encourages things like self-reflection, and it can help us understand those with varying opinions and perspectives, which is super relevant in our lives right now. So the first one that I have on here is the Enneagram, which if you Google Enneagram, there are a ton of tests that you can take. Don't pay for one. It's kind of a newer thing. And you will be categorized within 1 through 9, and then you'll get a wing. And each of those kind of they kind of put you in a box, a stereotypical box, but they're going to say, you are the helper, or you are the reformer. I am a 3-wing 2, which is the achiever. And it will tell me if you follow anything on Instagram or Twitter, it will give you all kinds of different things like this is how Enneagram 3s handle conflict, and this is how Enneagrams handle relationships, and like all these different things. And I'm like, that is me to a T. And it helps me be aware of what every other person's perception is of me. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize I did that, but I do. And it kind of simplifies the other one I have on here, which is the Myers-Briggs. I feel like that one, and these are both in the Onward workbook, but I feel like that one's like really intense and it takes you a little bit more time. If you want something kind of quick and that is all over Instagram, maybe try the Enneagram.
I took the Enneagram. Yeah, I took the Enneagram over winter break. It was super eye-opening, and it's given me a way to reflect on myself that I had not previously thought of. So it is really good for that resilience piece, because I'm like, oh, I'm doing that because of X, Y, and Z. It's very helpful.
Are you willing to share which one you are, Heidi? I have an idea of what I think you are.
I'm an 8.
I was gonna say 8. I'm not even kidding.
I'm the challenger.
My best
Those
friend,
poor people I work with.
I have 2 best friends and they don't know each other. And I told them, like when I was talking to the other one about, I'm like, you're both an 8. Like I just know it. And then they both are. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anybody else know their
Enneagram, but something similar that we've done on our team is Clifton's Strengths Finder. I don't know if any of you have done that as well, but I actually read all the different strengths in here before I took the test or the quiz, whatever it is, and kind of marked down which ones I thought I was based on the descriptions, and I actually got all 5 of mine correct. So it was very affirming for me to know, like, I'm very self-aware of who I am. So.
Well, this may surprise you, but I am also an 8. And I'm an ENFP. Also, not a shock. I've taken Myers-Briggs like since Psych 100, I think, in undergrad. And from 19 years old to 36 years old, I am ENFP forever and always.
But how important would that be for students too to take, so that they can get to know themselves as well, and just to try to explore and to see more concrete as to what they are?
And I think it's so hard to engage our students right now, as whether you're hybrid or in person or virtual only. So the more that we can tap into who they are and make it relevant for them, the better. All right, strategy 5. So going back to that stress cycle. All right, so our stressor versus stress. So I'm going to talk for just a minute, but I'm going to leave my slideshow up because I'm going to have you all guess out some things here in a minute. And so I'm going to see if some of the things you guessed out pop up on options to complete our stress cycle. So according to the sister authors of this book, so this is the secret to unlocking the stress cycle. And it's 2 sisters that wrote it. Stressor versus stress. The stressors are what activate a stress response. Stress is the neurological and physiological shift that happens in your body when you encounter a threat or a stressor. Just because you've dealt with the stressor doesn't mean you've dealt with the stress. We have to tell our body that it's safe to complete the stress cycle, or else the stress will linger. In order to do this, you must speak in your body's language. Its language is body language. Physical activity is what tells your brain you have successfully survived the threat, and now your body is safe, and it is a safe place to live. I want to hear, though, there are other options to complete our stress cycle. So I want to hear from you all, our panel. What other ways do you think we can complete our stress cycle other than just physical activity?
I think you could definitely meditate would be one.
Okay, so breathing. Okay.
For me, it's always about reflection, looking at where I started, looking at how much I've grown. Because sometimes when you're in the trenches of things, you don't really understand how much growth you've made until it's the end.
I think a big part for me is a socialization aspect as well, like being around people that make you feel stronger and better.
Yep, there's one. Positive social interactions. And even they say, even though if you are an introvert, which you'll find out if you take one of the personality tests on the previous slide, positive interactions in small bits actually help us. Now, they may drain us, but if we know that going into it, then we've got resilience building activities that we can do before and after. Anybody relating to that one? A big old cry? And affection doesn't necessarily mean like physical affection. It could be if you take your dog on a walk, you're getting physical activity and the affection of your dog. So that would be an example of doing both. Creative expression and laughter. Breathing, there's breathing.
It's like, I feel like this is a little like Family Feud, the survey says. And I was going to say eat chocolate, but I don't think that's probably on there.
I was thinking the same thing, Heidi. I was like, what's that game show? And you said it. Perfect. Chocolate is not on there, I guess.
Yeah, it's well, and you know, I think whatever allows you to tell your body that it's still safe. So if you feel safe while you are consuming that chocolate, Heidi, then do it. This is you.
Thank you for that validation.
Yes. You take from this what works for you. All right, our last strategy that I'm going to share, and then we're going to go into maybe a small reflection and Q&A. We have some time, is the calendar activity. So my invitation to all of you and to anybody that's watching on YouTube is to go into your calendar, whether it's digital or on paper, and carve out one day per month when you're going to do something that brings you happiness. You don't have to decide what that thing is. Okay, so you don't have to say, I'm doing this on March 12th or whatever it may be. And it doesn't have to be the same day each month. So you just pick a day that you know that you're already free, go through the entire year and block it out. So you are booked on that day. You don't know quite yet what you're doing, but you've got it set aside for you or for you and your family or whatever it is.
And you stand strong, right, Tiffany? You stand strong. You don't move it around.
Oh yeah, it's
okay.
You are booked. Yep. I mean, obviously emergency situations may arise, but this is your day, and you don't even have to decide the day before. You can decide the day of. You wake up and you feel like, I'm gonna sit on the couch and I'm gonna binge watch this and I'm gonna eat that chocolate, then that's what you do. Because sometimes we need that. Now, sometimes we need the hard stuff, like I will avoid laundry, right? Like I hate laundry with a passion. And I don't do it for self-care or to build resilience, but I know I'm going to be a better me if I just crack down for 2 hours and get that laundry done. So I think, Aaron, didn't you do this when we did this in the instructional coach PLN? Did you do the calendar activity?
I did. And I was not as resilient and intuitive as I would like to have. So this is a good refresher.
There you go.
We had life. We had an ice storm. It was nuts. I mean,
You know, I would add, like, you know, sometimes it is hard to keep yourself accountable. You know, you have good intentions at first, and sometimes you may fall off the wagon, but I think it's important to know, like, you can get back on and try it again. So, you know, if you're not sticking to it, then you can still get back on there and try it again until you do get it, you know?
Yep. Tomorrow's a new day. Always.
And that is a resilient mindset. It takes a lot to have that mindset, right? To not live in the past and to have everything just kind of holding you down. I think Elena in her book calls it cognitive distortion. We are distorting what reality with what's happening in our brain. Yep. All right, thank you all. All right, so I am going to show you just a couple more things here, and then I think we're gonna begin to wrap up. So here are some further reading and resources I've included on here. The resilience journal that's listed here, I don't know much about this, but it came up in my research, so I wanted to include it. So those of you that like to do journaling or like to maybe do some brain dumping, we've got the resilience journal here. The Onward books by Elena, this is the regular book, and then this is the workbook, the companion book that goes with it. I would suggest buying them together if you don't have either of them yet. This is one of my favorite authors, Tina Bogren. I listen to her podcast as well. So she has a self-care for busy educators book, and that is 180 days. So she gives you like weekly challenges. So she tells you, this week I want you to think about your health, or this week I want you to think about your inbox and social media and how you clear that out to make space for other things. This is Brene Brown. She's also one of my favorite podcasters and authors. And then this is The Cult of Pedagogy. She has a podcast and she also has different articles. This one here about the 12 ways teachers can build resilience was written a couple years ago, but I still think it has some good tips in it.
Tiffany, I've used the Cult of Pedagogy website as well, her blog, in some of those academy meetings I was talking about earlier, and used it as a resource for a lot of our teachers. Excellent stuff.
Yeah, I love her Find Your Marigold. I feel like that's like the baseline for cultivating resilience. Yeah. Any other resources that you all have? Oh, go ahead, Stella.
And she's from Kentucky.
Yeah, she is. Woo-hoo.
We need to get her on KY Go Digital.
That sounds awesome. I love it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Are there any other resources you all that are thinking of now, that's something that we've talked about is making you think of? I hope some of it was new for you all. I hope some of it was new for our viewers too. So.
And this is a great spot to say, if you're watching this on demand, go to the hashtag and put in these responses, because other people are going to be watching on demand as well, and then you're not alone with the conversation. So make sure you do that on Twitter. KY Go Digital. Yep.
One of the things in her book that stood out to me is we can build resiliency through creativity. And I find that sometimes, like if I'm really stuck on something, if I do a creative project or make something, I feel better. I don't know. And that might not work for everybody, but I find that that's a good strategy for me, and some students might get a lot out of that.
And knowing that creativity looks different for each person too, and helping students find their specific way to be creative can also help.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, Heidi.
I agree. I'm an organizer. Not all the time, but when I start to feel overwhelmed and I need to ground myself, Heidi, that's kind of how I am, as I get creative with my organization. Mm-hmm. And I like to do different bookshelves or rearrange my closet, even though it's a laundry disaster, right? So, but I feel so much better after, yeah. And it is kind of like a product, right? Like, look what I've created. Yeah, so that resonates with me.
One more thing, when especially those students that are watching, I've always really been frustrated when I hear students say, I'm not creative, I can't draw, I can't do anything. But you just hit on that creativity is in every single person. It's just in a different way. And Stella, you said that as well. But it's not always writing or drawing. It's in anything. Even playing basketball, you have to be creative in adding moves and doing those type of things. So, I mean, it's neat. It's neat to think of it that way.
All right, so I want to hear from everybody on the panel. So which resilience building activity is resonating with you the most today? And how do you see these impacting your work as an educator? And also anybody that's in the YouTube comments, please feel free to answer these. How do you see these being used with students? So any ideas or strategies or anything, just feel free to throw them out there. I want to learn from everybody.
Well, as we go back to school, and Stella, you just said that your district is going back to full-time next week. How important these skills of self-care are for our students and for our teachers and staff. It's not just something that we need to push aside. We really need to focus on daily.
I'm going to have to try the calendar thing, but I don't know if I can do a whole day. Can that be all right if I just do like an hour?
As long as you're saying on this day, I'm going to do something, because like every Saturday I make it a point to go to yoga. I'm not going to do yoga all day. I mean, I'd like to, but yeah. So every Saturday I'm doing the yoga. Yeah. Whatever it is, as long as it brings you happiness.
I just think these are such good reminders that we all probably do them a little bit but to focus on making an intentional effort, because when you reflect on when you don't have as much stress or you have a little more energy, it's from the things that you mentioned. It may be physical activity, it may be taking time for ourselves, but trying to make that intentional, like Heidi said, a calendar, and one of your strategies. That's hard, but think about how much better we feel when then we get back to the grind. So I think this is such a good show to remind, at least I know myself from the pandemic, and you have the kids and the work, and we're people pleasers and you want to make everybody happy. Sometimes we've got to take care of ourselves. And these are awesome strategies. I needed this show. I mean, this was great. I needed this. Our teachers need it. Our students need it. This was really good.
Thank you.
I think this is something that would definitely be beneficial to start including in our teacher training programs as well. Like, how many of our future educators in high school and college right now need to know these strategies, because teaching is a stressful profession and it's never not going to be. So we need to start getting people comfortable with these strategies early on, and hopefully that would prevent some burnout. I mean, obviously there's still going to be some, but
yeah, I feel like those are the teachers we ask to do the most, are the first year teachers, and I'm like, they should be the ones we're asking to do the least.
It's just always such a great reminder. Something as simple as, like, again, deep breathing. Good gosh, like, that's something that takes a minute of your day. If you're in the classroom, do it during planning. If you're in an office, like some of us are, I mean, take a second and just breathe for a minute. I can't tell you, like, how something simple like that changed my morning. Like, just doing that.
Is anybody having flashing ideas of the breathe signs that are across, that are in Hobby Lobby and Michael's and all those little crafty stores? Just breathe and just breathe.
I want to say that this has really struck a chord with me, and it's going to make me get back to my exercise plan. So that's going to be on my calendar, and I'm going to do it because I always feel so much better after I do it. So this is going to hold me accountable. I've set it out in the universe. So I think that this is just what I needed for that.
And I was planning a PD coming up in a couple of weeks, and I've got my Post-it note here to add the breathing strategies for the five senses at the beginning, because it's right there. I'm going to add it later this afternoon.
Yay. So happy. I'm going to kind of synthesize what everybody said and add one more strategy that's not on the slides, but you all maybe think of it. It's called a calendar audit. And this is from, what is her name? Her name is Rachel Hollis. So go back through and you think about how you felt at different times in your life. And then I always think about, June, I just always feel relieved. And I always feel physically my best. So why do I feel that way? I feel that way because I get to go on vacation with my mom for a whole week. And so I'm getting that positive social interaction. I'm getting that affection. I run on the beach, every day. I'm getting that physical activity. And so if you go through your calendar and think about, how did I feel at this time? And kind of go back a little bit, what led to that? Did I feel great? Okay, why did I feel great? Did I feel pretty crappy? Why did I feel pretty crappy? And then that helps you to continue to build that resilience moving forward into your following year. So if like I think somebody mentioned, you got some busy times coming up, like Courtney said, you have something really big coming up, remember what you do to make you feel great so that you can power through that and thrive rather than just survive. Yeah. So here is my contact information. If anybody wants to reach out to me, that is my Twitter handle at the bottom. My email is also just tiffany.mcguire@thetypicalbellevue.kyschools.us. And then I wanted to open it up to if anybody had any questions. So these can be in YouTube or they can be from the panel. If you think of anything later and you want to shoot me an email, please feel free. There is the bit.ly for the slides. So Stella, if you just want to take that slide, that is the breathing exercise, please feel free to just make that your own. So like I said, I don't own any of this. I just kind of synthesized a bunch of different resources for our time together today. But please feel free to email me. You can reach out on Twitter. I'm pretty active on social media, so probably shouldn't mindlessly be scrolling every night, but it is something I do. So, and thank you all. Thank you, Heidi, for inviting me. Thank you to the panel. This was wonderful. I had such a good time with you all.
Well, Tiffany, thank you for sharing with us today. It was an awesome session and just such an incredible kickoff to our spring season this year. It was interactive, it was relevant, it was perfect. So thank you so much for that. So I'm going to pass it over to Elaine now, I think, to share how everyone can stay connected with Kentucky Go Digital.
Absolutely, and I want to make sure that you know, thank you again, Tiffany and panel, and to our guest panels, Aaron and Stella. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm so excited to see you, and I know we'll have you back soon, hopefully. So if you're watching live right now, you can receive on-demand video support by subscribing to our KY Go Digital live channel here on YouTube, and that is kygodigital.com for short. And all you have to do is click that subscribe on the channel, and it just will send you notifications when we have awesome new episodes coming up. Our next show is Thursday, March 18th at 11, and we're going to dive into student autonomy with choice boards. So also, you're going to find us on Facebook and on Twitter with the hashtag KYGoDigital, and be on the lookout for our regional event this summer. The date is going to be released soon, so make sure that you be on the lookout for that as well. Everyone have a great afternoon.